every week. We lose every week. We lose every week. You're nothing special. We lose every week.
There's one goal here, and one promise I made to Mrs. Ford is winning. For that to happen, everyone needs to be on the same page to be in the best position with the right plan. Every person in this building has a job to do, and each job is important. If we can get one step better every day, that's putting this organization in the right direction.
Donald steps up in the pocket, now throws. It is picked up by Wentz. Come back right side. Inside the 10. It is Quandre Diggs to the 5. To the house. Touchdown, Detroit Lions. How about Stafford opening it?
Oh, my God. It is Sir Mix-a-Lot booty thick.
Lions fans, it's time for the podcast you've been waiting for. The Detroit Lions Podcast post-game show with your hosts, Chris and Case.
Hey, howdy ho, Lions fans. Welcome to the Detroit Lions Podcast, episode 245. This is the official Detroit Lions Podcast for Reddit, and we're doing it live, our post-game show. I am your dashing host, Chris, and with me is my good friend and co-host, Sam. How you doing, brother?
You know, same as last week and the week before that and 4 weeks before that.
I'm trying
5 in a row.
Trying to figure that out, what that might mean. I think we will. I think we'll figure that out today. We're going to talk about the Gays game. We're going to do a little roundtable discussion, and we will take your calls live like we do all the time because we love you so much. We have a great show lined up, friends. It's going to be a good time, even though we're talking about bad things. Sam, are you ready to go, brother?
I'm ready.
Let's kick this off and break it down.
All right, like always, a couple of quick announcements first. Check us out and help us out on the Patreon. Special thanks to Dylan from Giggity.
Guam.
Of course, our very first donor, Mathis, Brian B., Brian Brokeiser from I Prevail, and all the guys over there rocking it out on the tour. Patreon.com/Detroit Lions Podcast. Join the club. A couple people joined today, as a matter of fact. It's a great group of guys and gals. Has the most intelligent Lions chat on the internet. The greatest game threads. Keep you sane. It's just a little bit like us, right? I mean, you can feel the pain, but you don't wind up in that caustic place. It's a good place to hang. You can get access to that and a lot more. Just join the chat, the Patreon crew at patreon.com/Detroit Lions Podcast. Commit $1 a month to donations, and you'll get in there and have fun with that and all the early notification stuff that we do. Also, give us a like on Facebook, facebook.com/The Detroit Lions Podcast, Instagram, Detroit Lions Podcast, and on the Twitter, DET Lions Podcast, at DET Lions Podcast, the very, very best place to see Sandman.
With no pants on.
Yeah, baby. Subscribe on YouTube, youtube.com/Detroit Lions Podcast, youtube.com/Detroit Lions Podcast, and rate us iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, iHeart, wherever you want to do it. All right, that's enough. Let's do this.
This is no time for a quick release. We're going deep.
Whew, what an exciting day at Vikings Field. US Bank Arena.
Viking Zone, yeah. Biodome.
We looked better in the second than we did in the first half. The defense wasn't the Achilles heel today. The offense wasn't that spectacularly themed powerhouse that we've seen. What do you think? I mean, you think if we had Stafford on the field today, we could have won that game? I mean, they didn't score many points, really.
You know, it's always hard to say with games like this, right? So I think with Stafford, we obviously have an infinitely better chance than we do currently of winning games. But that being said, you know, I think the Vikings, their game plan kind of reflected who they were playing today.
Sure.
And they knew they weren't playing a Stafford-led team. That's for sure. But, hard to say.
Third down is always get sacked down in David Blau's world. How many? I mean, it was at least 4 times he got sacked on third down. Twice taking us out of field goal range.
Yep.
Once, I don't want to say it cost us a field goal because that was
yeah, Prater should make those. But,
yeah.
And the real problem I have is that those sacks were ugly sacks.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a our guy got beat real bad sack. It was I'm going to pop out of the pocket, attempt to do something that, has a very low success rate and then gets sacked, also while running at a 45-degree angle backwards. It's not, David Blau.
Wide open behind.
Yeah, he missed a bunch of guys. Yeah, it's one of those things where Blau looked like a undrafted third-string quarterback today, which,
wow,
is kind of what we should expect, I suppose. I don't know what else we were looking for.
Didn't see that one coming. As we said, right? We're Lions fans. We want to love the team, and I got a couple questions about that actually, Sam, in a minute here. But the expectations have to be incredibly low for this team right now, for the rest of the year without Stafford, with the injuries we have, and it doesn't make sense. I just don't see it making sense for Stafford to get back on the field this season. There's nothing to be gained by it at all. Wins from here on don't mean anything. There is a lot of stuff going on out there that's I have said it in a couple earlier podcasts that it's effectively live fire training, right? Like our Warrior out there, Slay got hurt. I wouldn't necessarily put him back in the second half. I just let our Warrior play. Get him some live fire exercises. Get him out there taking real-time snaps. It takes a while to develop a corner, and there's no better way to develop than getting there on the field and getting the chance to hawk on that ball. What do you think?
No, I agree. I think that the rest of this year has to be that. I don't know what else it can be. I mean, we're already a MASH unit.
Mm-hmm.
We're already playing guys that normally would never see play. I think we just have to let those guys get their, lumps and bumps.
Let me ask
and
you
see how they do.
Let me ask you about one in particular, and I'll put a scenario out there. Kerryon Johnson, right? A lot of these guys, we have to see what we have. So getting them on the field and getting the opportunity to see what some of these guys have is important. We haven't seen a full season out of Kerryon, right?
Yep.
We don't know about his durability, really. We really don't know if Kerryon Johnson is going to be a guy that this team can rely on as a running back, an RB1 or maybe an RB2. He gets healthy, say next week. Do you think he plays the rest of the year? I mean, if you're on one hand you haven't seen a lot of him, on the other hand, what you have seen, he gets hurt. What do you do with a guy like that? In Stafford's case, we know exactly who Matthew Stafford is. I feel like just let him sit. But Kerryon, what do you think goes your head?
That's a good question. That's a really good question. I think you have to play him. If he's not going to get hurt any worse or anything like that, I think you put him back out there and you have to build something off of seeing him play.
Yeah.
Last year he looked good when he was out there, but this year, not so much. We have a different blocking scheme. We have a whole new different everything.
Mm-hmm.
I think he still kind of falls in, even though he's played a lot and he's a second-year guy. I think he still falls into the live fire type of thing. You need reps behind an offensive line. You need reps in a system like this to find out where the running lanes are. I definitely think he's a slight mismatch for this running scheme. Whereas a guy like Bo Scarborough, who just heads north and south, doesn't worry about, anything else, seems to be doing okay in the scheme, a little bit better than Kerryon actually.
He had two Kerryon runs, one in particular where there was only one place in the backfield he shouldn't run, and he did. And he got tackled for a loss. But otherwise, I'm pretty happy with what we're seeing with him, especially against a defense like the Minnesota Vikings, because they're a pretty stout defense, and he didn't do too bad out there today.
No, actually I was watching him. I was thinking to myself, he seems to get like 50% of the yards we need. 1st and 10, he'll get 5.
Yep.
2nd and 5, he'll get 2. 3rd and 1, he'll get a half. I feel like that's just the way he's been running. But I definitely put Kerryon back out there because he'll have the whole offseason to get healthy. But we need to see more out of him to know where we sit for the rest of the year, to know, what kind of backfield we can actually field here. Because, Patricia has shown that he doesn't really like to have 4 running backs on the roster.
Right.
We've got Johnson and McKissick that kind of fill the 3rd down back role. And then we've got Scarborough now, but we need to know what Kerryon can do for us.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see. I'm trying to really quick while we're talking. I'm trying to find Scarborough's yards for the day, and I can't do that and produce a show at the same time. So I'm sorry, everybody.
Allow me, Chris.
Thank you.
Allow me.
I appreciate that. Yeah, he looks pretty decent out there. And while you're digging them stats up, I want to touch a little bit on Jared Davis. He's like a love-or-hate kind of guy. He's fire and water, oil and water. I don't know, whatever. He's hot or cold.
Hot or cold? Yeah, that's true. 65 yards for Scarborough today on 19 carries. 3.5.
It's not bad.
Average.
Not a consistent defense. It isn't that bad.
No, and a team that they know that we're not passing on them really. I mean, we'll get some chunks here or there, but nothing.
For those who weren't aware, late breaking news, it looks like Kansas City's equipment showed up in time that they don't have to forfeit. So that's good for them. Let's talk about Jared Davis. Hot and cold, all those kinds of things, but he took a pretty rough injury. I saw it as it happened. I was like, he's done. Injured this year. See you next year. That's it. I mean, I was certain that looked horrible. And then they flashed to him for a second in the coverage, standing with his helmet on the sideline. I was like, what? No way. And I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. He bounced back and played today.
No, it's Davis is kind of that guy, right? He plays through that stuff. He fights through it. I don't think anybody can ever question exactly how Davis feels about the game of football.
Right.
So
it's one of those things where it's everything except in his head. He's got all the physical attributes. He's got the mental. He's even got the attitude about the game. But it's like that one step he has to take to read and react. Right. We talked about it before. If he could just react and react consistently well, right?
Yeah.
he could be a top caliber player, and you sniff it sometimes. Right, you see it; it's almost there. But man, when he messes up bad.
Yeah, he, like you said, he's very hot and cold. I think this defense is hard for him to play. I think that this is a very bad defense for him to play in. I think maybe a positional change would help where he doesn't have to be the middle linebacker, maybe. But I think that they're still, grooming Tavai eventually to take that over. But I think we're going to have to wait till next year. We're going to have to see what they do with his fifth-year option. But I think if he's off the field for an extended period of time, you can definitely tell that we have zero speed at the linebacker position without him out there.
Right.
You could say that, okay, well, we can put in Jalen Reeves-Maben, who still has some speed. But he's kind of a mismatch, too. He's more of a special teams guy. It's who do we put on fast tight ends? Who do we put on running backs out of the backfield? It's, kind of a lose-lose situation at this point, to be honest, for Davis and for us.
For sure. What about Tavai out there today? The one thing I want to say that I noticed is he led every tackle with his head. I mean, he's just there all day. He's running to the sideline because he's not in on the next play. He's leading with his head to the sideline. I mean, that's something. There's two other times I saw he could have been called, and he wasn't. For head-to-head leading to the crown kind of thing. What's up with my man? Does he really want a short career, or what's the thinking here?
I thought the entire Lions defense was kind of a little chippy at that point.
Yeah.
Where we had a lot of guys stood up and 3-4 guys would come plowing in full force. So I don't know. Maybe the defense has a chip on their shoulder. I don't. This could have just been one of those fluke games where, for whatever reason, it seemed to happen to him twice, and maybe we became more aware of. That's how he seems to tackle. But
I do have to say, every time I was like, every time he came, it was like, it wasn't even like he like slid it in. It was obvious. It was just like a big barn heading towards whatever.
Well, yeah, even Tracy Walker knocked himself out of the game with that type of hit. He led straight in with his helmet, and I think he's, he might be done for the year. Who knows what they're going to plan on doing with a guy that's, it definitely looked like a concussion or a brain injury.
Yeah,
but. We've only got a few games left. Do you let him rest, or what do you do? But we've got, I think that they're just getting a little chippy out there, which I think is good. I think you should have a little bit of chip as a defense. I think you should take pride in hitting hard and letting the guys know that you're there, letting the running back know, here I am.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, it's not great when you cost your team 15 yards
and that's,
with a silly penalty.
Yeah. But that's one of the things that I throw back to the Do Your Job, the original Do Your Job. It's on YouTube. It was a Belichick and Patriots kind of interview festival of that Super Bowl run. And they lost bad in Kansas City. I think it was like week 2 or first week, early in the season, whatever. It was like 49-12 or something, right? And Belichick was talking about the game afterward. He said, well, the one thing I saw, though, is during that game, those guys didn't give up. right? They were out there, they were trying, they were doing everything they could back all the way till the clock hit 0. And I was thinking about it, and I'm like, okay, we didn't win, but maybe we've got something here. Maybe we've got the right guys, the right mindset that we can do something with this. It was interesting, and as that kind of kicked off the thinking, like even the coach believed that there's something they could take out of that and become better, and then they turned things around and won a massive run and then won the Super Bowl. It's interesting, and that's what you look for in games like that. You know, people talk about playing for pride. We're 3-9-1. I don't know how much pride there is in that, but as a professional, it doesn't matter if you're on a winning team or losing team, unless you're Vontaze Burfict. You have an element of pride amongst your peers and around the world being one of the very, very finest at the sport. So I think there's something to that. Those guys go out there. Really
and Patricia says that like every post-game presser, after we lose, like the guys aren't quitting. I'm proud of them for how hard they're working, and that's a point of emphasis, for Patricia for sure. And, that part seems to be paying off. We're not seeing any lollygagging or anything. I think we're just not in a good spot as a team to win these games, not for a lack of individual effort. I will put it that way.
Yep. I want to ask you a question now, and this is an interesting question because you're a season ticket holder, right?
Yep.
And so you've got a certain amount of investment. You've been a season ticket holder for how many years now?
9 years now.
Whew. See, and I was until I moved away. We had me and my friends had tickets, but so you're in there. You're there 9 years, and you're watching a team that is not really putting a whole lot of hope on the field. Those guys are trying. They're working hard. The coaches are working hard, and they're not going out and tanking on purpose. But at some point, and there's a point every year where you get done and your season's over, and you're like, man, those last 4 games last year, I wouldn't have gone to. Right?
Yeah.
If I hadn't pre-purchased those tickets for so much money, I just wouldn't even have gone to those games. I would have spent the time, the effort, the money, or whatever. Maybe wouldn't even have watched on TV if it wasn't for that. There's a lot of people out there, right, asking themselves about that in that exact same situation. Like, hey, you know what? This team's out. What's? I got things to do on Sunday. I got things to do anytime. Why not you leverage my Sundays to get some stuff done? So people are still tuning in. I'm wondering what it is, right, for you. That's kind of that driver. What pushes you every year? And this year, after this year, you're going to look back and you're going to say there's a lot of games that I didn't want to go to, but you've kind of bought in, so you have to. So I guess there's 2 questions here. One, as a fan, what keeps you tuned into the team this time of year while what we see in front of us on the field is there? And then beyond that, after you've kind of walked through what the rest of this year holds for you, what gets you to buy next year's season tickets after sitting through this year?
Well, I'm going to start with question 2 because that's the easiest answer. What keeps me buying my season tickets? Honestly, and it sounds super shitty, and I get it, but I have good seats. So my brain won't let me not buy season tickets because I know as soon as I quit, they're going to start to win. I'm going to want my tickets back. And I'm not going to have as good of seats, and it's going to be it's that thing that probably holds a lot of people, right? There's a ton of people in the lower bowl area that have seats that they really love, and are kind of trapped there.
FOMO.
So that,
right?
Yeah,
because you've watched the Lions team, you've bought into the luck, right? I think any Lions fan right now has to buy into the luck thing, whether it's the Green Bay game this year or any number of things that happen to us. It's always the opposite of what you want. Like, we will win out the rest of this year, wind up picking 15th or 17th in the draft, and the best obvious player is a tight end, right? I mean, that's where things land for us, right? So your thinking is that, okay, I'm gonna give up. I have great tickets, and I've worked my way up to these great seats over the years. So for those who don't know about the season tickets, you get to upgrade and improve as other people give up their season tickets, and it takes a long time to move to these kind of great seats. The second you let them go, they're gone, and you'd start at the back of the line again, right?
Yep, exactly. So it's a little rough, but and then I haven't really spoken out about this because I don't want people getting on my ass about it too awful much. But last year was the worst year of Lions fandom I've ever had in my whole life. I started out the year feeling a little wishy-washy about it.
Yeah.
Like I had feelings that I couldn't really put to paper or put to my mouth, but I had them. And then it turned out to be an awful year of football to be a Lions fan. We won 6 games, but it was ugly. And, to be honest, this year is the second worst that I can think of. Like the 0-16 team, like we knew that was a bad team.
Right.
There was no getting around it. We were starting dudes that wouldn't even play in the XFL.
Right.
It was a weird time. But, it's a long tradition to do this, right? And I actually thought about this as I sat down in my couch today to watch this Lions game. I knew what the outcome was before I watched.
Sure.
I knew there was very little to gain. So, in past years, you would say, okay, well, our offense is good, but our defense is bad. And that was like what the beginning of this year was. Yep. Or our defense is good and our offense is bad. But you always have that hope, right? Maybe something will change on offense today and we'll, get something going. There will be something that I can take away from this game that'll give me a positive feeling, at least partially, about this team as a whole. And recently, not so much. Yeah. So it's been a little harder, but I think that my fandom runs deep enough that, even through these hard times, I have to look at this and say, okay, which is worse? Losing to the Bengals the last year Jim Caldwell was here. It was like a must-win game, right? Against a hopeless Bengals team, and we lost. And the anger that came along with that, or which is worse, the anger that comes along with something like that, or the apathy that comes along with years like this.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets a little rougher. But, I'll keep tuning in. I'll keep caring. I'll keep thinking about why the Lions are bad or why the Lions are good. And, it's kind of out of our hands.
When I look at, like, because we've got a diverse fan base around the world. And one of the things I see is there's a level of commitment. And maybe we'll do a psychologist interview in the off season about Lions fandom. That might be actually a really good idea. But this level of commitment that people make, and if you're in Ireland, what's up, Gary, and England or Slovenia, Mattia, I think is how to say his name, but I could be completely wrong. So if I murdered, I'm sorry. But these folks are good, all over, and they are like slitting people's throats to be able to either get a stream or find a way to watch the Lions play, and they do it, ruthlessly watching, full heart on the sleeve kind of thing. They are absolute massive fans. Folks like you who've spent all this money on season tickets, right? It's like I've kind of invested in here. I've got this escalation of commitment almost that's going to continue, and I am afraid to miss out on finally being paid back for my investment. Right? It's really what it is. And you kind of exactly walk down to the casual fan who's like, I got to rake the leaves, or I guess. I mean, it's 75 degrees outside here, so I'm sorry. Shovel snow, whatever you guys have to do. But it's really interesting to see how that goes. I'll tell you just a side thing. It's not football related, but it's a funny story. We went through an exercise at my work a couple of years ago. I was sitting in with, it's a Fortune 125 company. These vice presidents, super smart, rich people sitting there, and they had a thing where they held up a $20 bill and you had to bid on it. Right, and you bid on this $20 bill. Whatever you bid, you get to keep the 20. The only downside is whoever had the second highest bid still has to pay the money, but doesn't get the $20 bill. Right. So if I bid $5 and you bid $6 and you won, you'd get the $20 bill for $6, but I still had to pay $5. Right. So they started bidding on this thing, and then started getting up to 18, and someone said 19. Like, I'm not gonna lose $18. Okay, I'm gonna bid 20. Right. So now I break even. Well, the other guy, he's like, no, I'm going to lose $19. If I bid 21, then I'll only lose $1, right? 21. Yeah. And they kept going. They got up to $107 for this $20 bill before. These are really, really smart people. Before the person stopped and said, let's talk about escalation of commitment. So anyway, I think that might be kind of fun to talk about. So let's get back to the team. One other thing I want to ask, and we can start taking calls if you want. 248-782-8384. 248-782-8384. Go ahead and ring us up, and we'll bring you in. Or if you want to do it on Skype, you can do it. Detroit Lions Podcast, all one word. Detroit Lions Podcast. So the big talk right now, the little bit of backburners, fire Patricia Quinn and everything, and burn the whole place down. But the more serious talk, I think, and it's at the forefront right now, is the Pasqualoni stuff.
Yep.
Pasqualoni will absolutely be the fall guy this year, and I say this, and I'm telling you all. He's going to retire. They're not going to fire him. he filled a need and a role that was there for a long time. I think the Quinn and Patricia thing, the conversation with Mrs. Ford was about building a bigger or taking a bigger approach and a longer thinking approach to this team. And hey, Aaron, how you doing? English fan. I think Martha knows this is a multi-year thing to build this team to where it needs to be because of where we were and where we'd come from and how the team was structured. And there's some significant changes that are happening. You just don't go to a defense like this from what we had before in a year or two. It takes a lot to kind of make that switch. So I think the Jim Bob Cooter experiment was on purpose, and it was both to satisfy your quarterback as well as start working on the defensive side of the ball to get your scheme, since it's so complex, start putting that thing in there and let the coach spend his time there. I think this year is the opposite of that, where coach was concentrating on his head coaching and building up those skills and game management skills and all that sort of thing, and letting Pasqualoni run his defense and letting Pasqualoni do what JBC did, and that's going to be the end of it. But because he came in at such short, we had to hire so late because we had a Super Bowl winner that we hired as a coach. There wasn't a lot of great defensive coordinators around at the time. I think now they're going to let him retire. Thank you for doing what you did, and they're going to bring somebody in this year that's going to fill that role. And I believe probably do something a little like Bevel did with the offense on the defensive side of the ball there, because we continually say, and we heard it from our favorite closed head injury victim, Chris Spielman. We heard it say all day today that we have players that are playing way better than the record on this team.
Yes.
And I think that a little bit of coaching in the right place is going to help that. And I think Pasqualoni will be allowed to retire, or will be told to retire, or he just will retire, we'll say, at the end of this year. And we're going to find a defensive coordinator. I think the real question is who's the DC that's going to be available that we want the most. I like the Bevel hire so much because he wasn't a washed up guy. He was a proven guy. He had a Super Bowl under his belt, right? He knew what he was doing, and he's come in and done a really, really good job with our offense. I don't know that I feel like hiring a really good college defensive coordinator right now is the way to go. I don't want to try somebody on for size. I want somebody who we've seen succeed before. Where's your head at? What do you think? Are we getting rid of Pasqualoni first off, or will he be gone?
Yeah, if he's not gone, I think there will be riots in the streets, because there's people that want both Patricia and Quinn fired, and if Patricia's fired, everybody else is basically fired too. Yep. Somebody could decide to retain Bevel if they wanted, but I think everybody else would be gone. Mm-hmm. But to me, the real awkward question is that we are running the defense that Patricia ran, or at least a version of it, in New England.
Yep.
So Pasqualoni was a perfect hire for Patricia, because Pasqualoni's job was to know what the game plan was and to make adequate play calls. So if Pasqualoni is in the know about what Patricia wants, he just needs to be a extra hand that Patricia has, right? And he just does his job.
Yep.
I guess the question becomes, is our defense failing because of the scheme that Patricia has decided to put in, or are we failing because Pasqualoni doesn't fully comprehend what Patricia wants to do and is making miscalls?
Sure.
Well, I'm not sure if we can bring in somebody that has their own defensive philosophy and have them work here. And that's going to be the scary part, is that, Bill Belichick always got around that by hiring within. He would hire his defensive back coach to be his defensive coordinator, or, a linebackers coach in Patricia's case. And then he hired the linebackers coach again, Brian Flores, to come in and do it. He's hiring guys that have been in the system, that know what he wants, and their job is literally to call the game the way that they think Bill Belichick would call the game.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's hard to find.
It's
I think that
rocket scientist in New England, right?
Yeah.
Hey, really quick, we have a phone call. Caller, what do you think? Is Pasqualoni, is this his last year here?
Probably, but it's not his fault. Long time missing you guys, man. This is Levi from back in the day.
Levi! How you
How
doing,
you guys
man?
doing?
It's been forever.
Doing good. Yeah, it's like happy for the success of this podcast, man. You guys are killing it.
Oh, thanks, brother. Appreciate it.
Like, the question you bring up doesn't really matter. You could put Jesus Christ in a defensive coordinator. You can't fix crap. It's like
The problem is Bob Quinn, and it's through and through. He's not a GM. He never has been. He wasn't even. He's not even able to do the job. He can't assess talent. That's been the whole problem. It's like scouting film can tell you that Jared Davis can't play linebacker in the NFL. Yet he keeps putting him on the field. And I know that everybody's going to probably say, "Oh, that's Matt Patricia." No, that's Bob Quinn. He doesn't want to prove that guy as a bust. He's making that call to keep that guy on the field. Reeves Maven outplayed him this year.
Let me ask you, and that's the thing that I'm really curious about here, because there's a couple different camps, and we talk about, you know, okay, if it's Quinn's fault, we have a lot of really, really good talent on the field that's underplaying its ability, right? I mean, and I think that, to me, that's an obvious, you know, statement of fact. And to me, that kind of lands in the coach's lap, whether it's Patricia or Pasqualoni or Bevel or the Lions coach or whoever. I feel like the talent that's out there is good enough to be put more wins in the win column than what we have now.
Yeah, I think.
I'll put this question up there. So who would you rather have right now, Kerryon Johnson or Matt Breida?
Ooh.
Or who would you rather have at tight end? And they sound fair, but it's totally fair. George Kittle or T.J. Hawkins or Jesse James? Because
Yeah, I mean, that's
those guys could have been on our roster. No, seriously. Those guys are low-round picks that we fired a GM over who's in San Francisco running their scouting department right now. He's the guy who's responsible for all those guys. We shouldn't have, I said it back in the day, we shouldn't have fired Mayhew. They could have got someone in to fix the cap.
This is an interesting. You're challenging some preconceptions I got, Levi, because
right.
I really, really am not a huge Mayhew fan at all, because I felt like he swung for the fences on talent a little too much, and sometimes he hit, sometimes he didn't. Right, but the thing about that is when he hit big. Right, when you're always constantly going for base hits, you still either get a base hit or you line out.
Yeah, that's the big.
You don't swing for fences. You aim for singles all the time. What if you strike out? You can't even get on base. We're not even getting on base right.
Yeah, you know, and that's the thing that that's the thing I've been talking about for a while is how much different the Lions draft strategy has been under Bob Quinn than it was under Martin Mayhew. Martin Mayhew, like you guys both have stated, would swing for the fences and would hit on some really crazy picks that would just turn out fantastic, or we would get a Titus Young or a Ryan Broyles or, you know, even a Louis Delmas, you know, Javid Best. like when Javid Best was healthy, he looked fantastic. And then you've got Quinn over here who is drafting low or high floor, but possibly low ceiling players that will get the job done, but are more aligned with base talent, right? Your team has 5 guys with base talent, and then you've got another 6 that, you know, could be anywhere. You could have another 2 very special guys and maybe 3 guys below average. But it's a completely different philosophy. And I think when Mayhew hits, it gives you teams like what the 49ers has right now. You know, and it gives you like 2011 with the Lions. But then it also gave you real bad drafts where, like, he had 2 drafts where I think like nobody happened. So it's hard to say. I don't think Mayhew was as bad as people knocked him for, you know, but
Let me.
I kind of like where this conversation's going.
Let me just. I'm going to throw a little wrench in here, just because I think this is a really, like you said, a good conversation. You talked about somebody drafting, but what and somebody else, Mayhew drafted and someone else fixing the cap. But that's the one thing I think that Quinn has done is fix the cap, right? And maybe this is something I've kind of put forth a little bit in some previous shows. The idea that the Lions are building a lot of mid-level talent and depth of mid-level talent, right? It's inexpensive. It raises the overall talent of the team. I mean, let's face it, because we had glaring holes. There's still some holes. I don't want to say there isn't, right? But there was glaring holes, and what we had was a couple of star players and then crap on the field, right? I mean, remember when Sue and Johnson and Stafford were taking up like 80% of the cap? Numbers. Right? You couldn't pay anybody. Now you're in a position where you have kind of a baseline of talent, and you can pick the position where you, in either free agency or you want to swing for the fences in the draft, where you can bring in those real difference makers. Because I think if we had a Calvin Johnson and Ndamukong Suh on this team right now, I think it's a whole different ball game out there. With the guys we have, right? I mean, you drop, I don't know, Amendola, right? And then you drop any one of the defensive tackles. We have a whole different team out there playing a whole different elevation of game. That may be kind of the plan here, is to baseline all them contracts out, get that flatline contracts in place, fix the cap problem, and then be able to spend money on those kind of superstar positions of need for this team that'll put us over the top. Thoughts, ideas, questions, slander?
So that will work if we were getting the draft picks. We're not. It was like most of our picks are injured. And a lot of these issues were issues with some of these guys in college. It was like, I remember when Jarrett Davis was drafted, and I keep harping on this guy because he's such a bad player. And Dalvin Cook was available. We needed help at running back. Game film clearly showed you Dalvin Cook was a special player. And you know what I get? I would actually say this is your first year. I chalk that up. But year after year, we keep having the same issue, and you didn't try to pick up backups in those spots because, and I think that if you ask Patricia personally, his issue is that his linebackers are so inept in the interior that they can't call the game properly.
Right. I wouldn't.
Now that being said, I do like Tavon. It's like, and I think Patricia was responsible for that guy, not Quinn.
Yeah, I think they're definitely more on the same page with their draft picks. And Quinn has stated that he feels way more comfortable drafting with Patricia because he knows how to draft those guys, because he did it, or he didn't draft, but he pro scouted in New England for so long that it's basically the same. Right. He's just, it's easier for him to do that for sure.
And he was in the room when they were making the choiches and having the conversations, right? I mean, he had
but he wasn't holding the bat.
No, he wasn't holding the bat, but he had a significant role where, Belichick gets caught in the Greyhound station and can't make it to draft day. They would have handed the bat to him most likely. So it was his time it was his turn to get up to the plate. So
and so the more I think about this topic we've got going on here, the more I think about if the plan was to try to get mid-level guys in to at least bolster the team so that we didn't have as many big dips as we had in the past. We're like, oh, we are missing a cornerback, and that's just what teams do. They go against that bad cornerback all game, and there's nothing we can do about it. We're going to get a bunch of guys that are mid-level, do that. I think the argument against that would be that when we've had higher draft picks, like number 8, and this year, I guess we're going to have to see what happens. I think that's kind of when you look for those guys that are going to change your game plan completely or change your opponent's game plan completely. And so far, Bob Quinn is kind of stuck with his standard, like I said, high floor, low ceiling type of thing. I mean, Hawkinson could turn out to be fantastic, but at the end of the day, he's a tight end. And, even if he turns into an awesome, but Kittle was a 4th round draft pick. So that's a little, and that's kind of the funkiness of it all, right? Is what positional value do we get out of a tight end at number 8? Whenever I talk about Hawkinson, I get crap about it, like, oh, he's not bad. I'm never saying he's bad. His position's hard to learn. He's a rookie. It's not anything, right? Like, he hasn't played great and he hasn't shown up. What scares me is that he doesn't appear to be a part of the game plan so far. But when you pass up pass rushers like Brian Burns, Montez Sweat, when you pass up, the guy that Buffalo got, I can't remember his name right now.
Ed
Oliver, when we have glaring holes on defense, that's where it gets a little weird for me. So I'm just hoping that we can you know, hit a little bit higher profile stuff.
Yeah.
Right. Because so far it looks like Quinn's been trying to get our high quality players in free agency rather than in the draft.
Yeah. Hey, Levi, I'm going to let you go, man. I'm going to let some of the folks get in on the horn, but it was really, really great to hear from you, man. Love. You've been here since the first year, right? I mean, you've been around for day one.
Good. It's like since you guys started, you guys are killing it.
Thanks.
Before I go, I don't want to be totally negative. All the Lions really need is an inside linebacker and a pass rusher. They'd be okay. Oh, and a running back.
Yeah.
They do that, knock it out playoffs next year.
All right. I'll
you
get
guys have a good one.
We'll talk to you in February.
All right.
Later.
All right.
Bye.
Okay, wait.
Levi, man, he goes way back. Whew, he's great. All right, let's see. Talked a bit about Davis. We talked early in the show about Matthew Stafford. Just want to touch on that again. We're in agreement that he sits for the rest of the year, right? We think that he shouldn't be on the field. There's nothing he's going to gain, and it's again the live fire training exercise is a great opportunity for guys like Arouarier, and I think David Blau too. Let's face it, this is an opportunity for him to get out there, and I don't know that you go find somebody else, pick him up, bring him in, or anything like that. I think it's time to just play these guys, let Blau get some experience, see if he really is your number two, because he looks like he has some potential. He looks like he's a guy that's not going to ruin your team if you need him for a couple of drives in a game to keep you in it. But getting some experience in the real world would probably be good for him. All right.
Well, and it's at this point it's time to think about tanking without tanking.
Yeah.
You can never make NFL players tank. What you can do is you can make sure that the one player that has like real control over whether the Lions win or lose does not play.
Just put your second and third stringers out there, the guys that are on the bubble, and evaluate the crap out of them. And if they win, they win. And you're going to have some that do and some that don't, right? You're not going to have your top team out there. But
no.
All right, hey, we got a call right now. Caller, it's Aaron from across the pond, all right, isn't it?
Yes.
How are you?
Actually, I'm good, mate. Well, I could be better. It's been a crappy week for sport for me, but
yeah,
we keep going. Look on to next weekend.
Yeah,
it's what we do, right? I mean, Aaron had mentioned in the chat in the YouTube that he's one of those folks across the pond who's outside the U.S. I hate the phrase across the pond, and now I'm saying it. I said it twice in a damn call. I'm such a dope. But so let's talk about that escalation of commitment, Aaron. Here you are, a Lions fan. You what's your connection to Detroit? Let's start there. What got you connected to this team in this city?
Right, I don't have any actual connection to Detroit, not personally anyway. I kind of grew up a huge fan of Eminem.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
And I don't know, about 5-6 years ago, I was in college, I was in university, and a friend of mine was a massive NFL fan. He was a Broncos fan. And he was the only guy in our whole class who was into the NFL. And I thought, do you know what? He's on his own. He's always coming in his NFL gear, his Broncos gear. I thought, I'll watch the Super Bowl that year, and I'll give it a go, and then I've kind of got something to talk about it with him. Watch that Super Bowl. It was the New England Patriots Seahawks.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And I tell you what, that's the first time I've ever watched the NFL properly, and I was still learning the rules. Didn't have a fucking clue what was going on, and even I was sat there at the end when they threw the ball, and I went apeshit. Like straight up that. But kind of like, oh, okay, I like it. I watched for a year, and I fell in love with Megatron.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely fell in love with Megatron. So kind of like, right, okay, I grew up a massive Eminem fan. I kind of feel a weird personal connection with Detroit because it's similar to the city that I'm from. It's a working class blue collar city.
Mm-hmm.
One of them.
Yep.
I thought, that's it. Detroit will be my team.
Yeah.
So, but Calvin Johnson, Megatron was the guy who he wrapped it up for me, and then he retired.
Yep.
You got the Detroit Lions experience right away. Right away.
You start with seeing someone else in the Super Bowl, and then it's your favorite player. Yeah, it's just like the Detroit Lions experience.
best initiate. That's it's the only way you can get properly initiated into the family.
Yeah, exactly. One of us.
You're right about the city of Detroit. I'll tell you, the thing that I've noticed about Detroit is the people here. Are there, unfortunately, there, but it's a city that's been, you see it in the pregame videos and stuff they do, but it's a city that's had to fight hard, and because of that, there's a sense of, you know what, we'll take adversity, and we're going to shed it off, and we'll grind our way right back through it, and it's a city in the working place that I see that respects people that work hard. And I go around and often, you talk about optimization and efficiency and all those kinds of things, and they're important. But if you're constantly trying to lazy your way out of things, right? And I see that, all around LA. I see that where I'm at now. People don't work hard. Things get tough, they move on. They just do. They don't stick through. They won't grind through the hard stuff to get to the good stuff, knowing that there's good stuff at the end. And that's what one of the things I think that makes Detroit so much different, and in my frame, and maybe it's because I grew up there, but better than all the other places that I've lived and the people I've worked with. It's a sense of work ethic and respect for people that work that really means something to me.
Yeah. Well, I'm from Manchester, so
yeah.
The we started the Industrial Revolution.
Right.
It's a proper working class city.
Yep. And City or United, by the way?
I'm a Blue.
Okay.
Again, that's another reason for Detroit. Blue.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was, like I said, it's been a really shitty week for sport because City played United yesterday and lost. So
sorry about that. So let me ask you about what do you have to go through to see games? I mean, did you just get Game Pass and it was that easy for you, or are you doing some other kind of?
First couple of years, I mean, Game Pass in Europe's been shit for about 4 or 5 years.
Sure.
So there was no way I was going to be paying. It's like 120, 130 £130 a year.
Right.
And I was like, I'm not committing for a service that, that's like Game Pass. It doesn't work.
Right.
It's awful.
And then if Detroit are on Sky Sports over here, it's blocked on Game Pass, and I thought, I'm not paying for, again, 2-3 games a season to get cut off.
Right.
I'm only going to watch Detroit on it. So, but like today, so I have got Game Pass this year because they've worked on it. But so it's been quite easy for me to get Game Pass. But I was in Wales today, and I was driving home and had to watch. My girlfriend kicked off with me because I had to watch the game in the car. She's trying to talk to me and have a nice journey in the car, and I'm sat there trying to watch Detroit. And obviously, we're Detroit's doing what Detroit does, and I'm getting aggravated, and I'm getting wound up, and she's trying to have a nice car journey. But
well, don't let it get to you. Don't let it get you down. I think that's one of the things we would talk about here as we start getting towards the end. Hey, Aaron, I'm going to let you go, man. Thanks so much for calling. Thanks for listening, and thanks for being a Lions fan. It's awesome, and I'm certain we'll talk some more as the season and the off season gets going, because we're already starting to look to that draft time and get excited about that and free agency coming.
We're in there's always next year territory.
That's the only thing that's getting me going now. That's the only thing I can be excited about now.
Yeah.
You are a true Detroit Lions fan. I can. You're here with the rest of us. It's perfect.
All right.
I'm just glad to be part of the family.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. All right.
Have a good one.
Cheers.
No worries, guys. Thank you.
Bye. All right. It's great. I always love to talk to the guys overseas. I'd love to get their perspective where they come from. So.
Yeah, because that's a whole different type of fandom, because like you said, it's hard to get games over there.
Mm-hmm.
The Game Pass is crappy. Like you said, Sky Sports is, kind of does what it does, and the NFL blackout rules are silly.
Yep.
So it's a whole different,
the whole streaming piece that they have done so poorly as well that's been an absolute embarrassment. And I think they need to be called. The NFL needs to be called out on that and be shamed into doing something better. One last thing I want to talk about the team. Like we said, this is kind of a point now with the team that it's a A football team that is basically live fire preseason mode, testing out its folks, seeing what they have, what they can bring to the games. Don't let these games get you angry, please. Please. He said he was getting agitated in the car. Don't let it do that to you, please. It's not worth it, folks. It's not worth your health or any of the health of those around you. Just know. We all said ahead of time, if Matthew Stafford wasn't in there, that we had no chance. Expect every game going in, no chance, and whatever we walk away with from there is something to carry your torch of love for the Lions and use it to light next year's fire ahead of the season and hopefully our eventual Super Bowl run. Would you say anything add anything to that, Sammy?
Yeah, I think the safest place to be right now is we know we're not very good and we have to wait till next year. We just, we get to watch the Lions practice on TV. That's a pretty
good way.
So we can be excited about that.
Think about how excited you are when the preseason finally gets here, right? I mean, how ramped up you are. It's football, all right. It's still football, and it's a long, hard off season. So enjoy.
Yeah, I think the only thing that we can get upset about is if they beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers next week.
That's.
I think then people can be upset.
Yeah, that's one that's going to be frustrating. Of course, that's the one that got home, right? So So the Broncos showed up today, right? So we have an excuse for losing the Broncos. We have an excuse for losing to the Packers. We have no excuse to win against the Bucks. So please don't.
please.
Jameis Winston. Maybe we could be. We're always on the wrong side of the records when teams score records. Maybe we could be there for Jameis Winston's record-breaking interception for a season. Maybe we could do that.
If he plays, he hurt his hand today, so we'll see.
Yeah,
might be backup versus backup.
Oh wow, the old Rock'em Sock'em.
Yeah, the old Mountain West game.
Oh God. All right, so we got all that. We'll talk about Peter Von Panda. Can't not talk about Peter Von Panda because he's one of the most gorgeous pandas you'll ever see. Fuzzy, warm, fluffy, and cuddlier than ever. Check him out, youtube.com/Peter Von Panda. One of the funniest guys on the YouTube. He does just straight off the cuff kind of hilarious, funny kind of videos. He does a ton of reviews on products. Before you head on over to Amazon.DetroitLionsPodcast.com, go see Peter Von Panda's YouTube channel and have a good time because you're gonna find he reviews everything, and it's an entertaining. I've lost an hour last night going on his video and watching the reviews because they're good. They're valuable, but they're also pretty funny. He's got a great sense of humor. He's absolutely one of us. So youtube.com/Peter Von Panda. Check him out. All right, with all that, let's talk really quick. We got a question from Zachary about if Slay is a Lion next year. Let's we'll open for calls, and we'll have the is Slay a Lion next year conversation as we look for calls, and then if nothing comes in, we'll close out. Does that sound good, Sam?
Sounds good to me. Yeah, I think. I guess I'll get us started on this. Is Slay a Lion next year? I think it's a huge mistake if Slay is not a Lion next year. Barring him wanting the craziest, if we have another Sue situation on our hands where he is going to go get the most money possible and is going to go to Miami because, no taxes, then whatever. It is what it is. But
I'll just say the no taxes thing is really huge, though. I just want you to know. It's a big deal.
So, but if they let him walk in free agency and he gets a standard good deal, I don't know if he's the top paid cornerback in the market, maybe top 3, top 4. His play hasn't looked great this year, but I think he's still Darius Slay at the end of the year, and I'm not too concerned about it. But I think if they let him go, that sets us back. That puts us in a really, really weird spot where if everybody agrees that if next year Patricia and Quinn fail again, that they're gone, but we're actively losing pieces to the puzzle. So if we lose Rick Wagner, we lose Slay, we lose Glasgow, we lose, whoever else. Now we lose Melvin, the other cornerback. Now we're looking at, having to fill 6 or 7 pieces that have to be filled. We don't have any luxury, let's draft a, high profile defensive end in the first and second. and then let them kind of grow into their roles. Like, I don't know if we have that ability anymore.
Right.
You know, and then that makes it way harder for everybody.
For real. And you're not going to draft a number one cornerback in the NFL.
Nope.
That plays as the number one cornerback in the NFL, and you're just not going to. It's
not in a year.
Happen. No. It takes time. So then you look, okay, well, who's going to be available for free agency? Nobody of Slay's value. So Slay's in a spot where he can command some real money. And, you know, if you kind of look at the kind of Patriots model, their cornerbacks are a huge and very important piece of how that defense runs.
Yep, the biggest piece.
Yeah, you do not gouge that big of a hole into your team when you have so many other holes that you're going to need to fill, right? And I mean, if you think like if you're good with Levi, right? What his point was, you need a linebacker, you need defensive line, you need a running back. So now you're going 4th round to get a cornerback, or are you? I mean, I guess you could go 4th round with a running back, but where are you going to go? Defensive line or linebacker in your 3rd round, and hope you get somebody who's going to be that difference maker, right?
Yep.
You really start hurting yourself there. If it does not feel like losing Slay is going to be a good idea. His attitude was frustrating in the year, but things seem to have changed a little bit. And I'm sure the Diggs thing, I know it shook him. You could tell on his Twitter and
yeah, you know. And it's one of those things that, you know, it's kind of an obscure thought I'm having here, but Calvin Johnson released that interview a couple weeks ago, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the big things he said was that when the Lions, in his opinion, didn't fight hard enough to keep Ndamukong Suh, they didn't fight hard enough to keep Nick Fairley. You know, in his mind at that time, it was, well, the Lions don't care about winning. And so, you know, if you think about it in that way, you let Slay go, your best cornerback, you're creating a big hole on your defense, and you're kind of telling all the rest of the players, you know, maybe they don't care about winning. Maybe, you know, that this isn't what we thought we signed up for when we signed here, or, you know, and that stuff gets around the league. Everybody's friends now. Everybody talks to each other on Twitter. You know, it's not hard for other players to say, hey, man, don't go to Detroit because they don't care about winning. They'll pay you, but then nobody else gets paid, and it is what it is.
Yeah. I mean, you work in a company basically with 1,500 employees, right? I mean, as far as the players are concerned, and those are the guys on the shop floor doing the work, right? And then, you know, you got 50 guys where you're at 53 guys, and you know, you definitely know the people you work with and you play with, and on the other team, and especially, you know, in our jobs, we do our work and we work in teams at different points, but these guys study each other, right? It's not just getting to know somebody. You're getting to learn the very, very deepest tendencies of each other. Nobody in any non-sports job, I'll say, off the top of my head, studies the people they work with like NFL players and other sports players. There's so much that goes into, you just know so much about somebody you're going to play against without even talking to them. It's crazy. So there's definitely a closeness there, and those messages they get out, and they're unspoken messages. Got a question in the chat is if with the whole Diggs situation, can you still trust your coach? I think that's on the GM more than the coach, because that's the GM's decision. Now, whether we don't know if Patricia agreed or not with it. Patricia will show a unified front with Bob Quinn, though. I know that much. And so whether he agrees or not, you're never going to know until maybe the memoir after Super Bowl win number 3, whether they thought it was good or not. But it's I think if you're going to distrust somebody, it's the GM, and hopefully your coach in the locker room after something like that can prove that he's still your coach and deserves to be your coach and can win the team back. I look at Diggs and the behavior that I see now and kind of the way he's acting kind of makes me think that, or Slay, did I say Diggs? I look at Slay now, and I think maybe he's either just said that it is what it is. I'm not going to be a problem, and I'm just going to do my own thing, or he's accepted it and he's kind of bought into what his coaches told him and they've talked about, and he's moving forward. So we'll see. One thing about a cornerback is they got to have a short ass memory, so maybe he's applying that here too. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it. Sam, man, are you okay if we just do it?
Yeah, man.
Oh, well, I mean, not on camera, right?
Oh, well.
All right, don't forget.
What's the fun in that? Yeah.
It's that time of year. Get all your gifts. Amazon.DetroitLionsPodcast.com. Amazon.DetroitLionsPodcast.com. It takes you straight to Amazon, and they give us a little kickback. Don't enrich Jeff Bezos. Help us out. Support your show by doing that kind of thing. Also, for any Lions gear, gifts, or otherwise, fanatics.DetroitLionsPodcast.com. Fanatics.DetroitLionsPodcast.com. Same thing. They give us a little kickback on all your purchases. Don't let the man get richer. Help your young, small, gorgeous friends who put this great content together for you by going there. And with that, we're going to call it a show. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Remember, we're looking for your involvement. Use the comments in the subreddit to give us your feedback. Don't forget about us on Patreon. We'll take one more call. We'll get one more in. Hey, caller, what's your name? How much have you had to drink?
My name's Ken. Completely sober and not liking that at all.
I can imagine. I've had to stay sober to do this show because I'd be absolutely wrecked by the end of a couple of these games. And the one that got me the most, where was it? It was Case. I think I got the drop here. I wasn't ready to do it. Oh, here it is. This is Case. Like, I think it was our first post-game show after he drank far too much. He had been quiet for a long time. I'm like, Case, you there, man? You okay?
I'm toast.
You could almost hear his body hit the floor as he fell back after saying that. Oh, man. So what's up, Ken? What do you got for us, bud?
Well, you brought up the whole thing about Pandarius Slay, and I don't disagree with anything you guys have said, but let me just ask a question.
Sure.
Would a good team pay a 31-year-old cornerback on the way down? I mean, would the Seahawks do that? Would the Patriots do that? I'll tell you something. I mean, like I say, don't disagree with what you're saying, but that's a move that teams like the Lions, who have to prove to people that they want to win, do.
I'd put it. So I think we were down with not paying him crazy money, right? And I think that's where we're at. What that number is, I don't think we've kind of identified or specified yet. But you're absolutely right. I think where you're like the most on point is most teams don't do that. Good teams don't do that because then they just fill the gap created with a departure. The Lions have to kind of do that because they have so many gaps that they have to fill. So what's the number, right? I mean, that's what it comes down to, is how much are you willing to part with and how much of a cap hit are you willing to take on a guy that's probably going to play 2 years at best as a CB1 for this team, right?
Okay, but they don't even – okay, now maybe I'm wrong here, but my understanding is he's got another year left on his contract, right?
Yeah.
We don't have to do anything if we don't want to.
That's right. We could even roll the dice on a cornerback in next year's free agency in 2021. And the other part of it is you have the whole collective bargaining agreement. So I have a feeling there's going to be a whole lot of player movement.
Well, I don't know. I wouldn't, okay, let me just move on. The other thing I wanted to talk about was Jelani Tavai.
Yeah.
I think there are good things about Jelani Tavai. My concern about him is, okay, Jared Davis can't cover anybody, okay? He's athletic enough to do it, but he can't cover anybody.
Right.
Jelani Tavai can't cover anybody, but I think he can't cover anybody because he's not athletic enough. I don't think he's ever going to be good enough to cover a running back or to even cover a decent tight end. And I think I'm not saying let's get rid of the guy, but he's a 2-down guy to me. And I know the Lions are going to have to play him on 3 downs in all likelihood, but that's not a strength.
No, and that's one of the fears that I personally have about how this team is currently being built and why I don't think, Patricia is going to be fired this year, is because this team is built kind of specifically on the defensive side of the ball. And you've got players like Tavai, who I don't know play on a standard defense in the NFL. I don't know if he does. I can think of maybe 2 other teams that might use him properly, you've got like the Titans and you've got New England. And everybody else, I don't know if they have room for a two-down linebacker that's a thumper like that. And so that's a little scary. So you're right on that front. I don't think that we'll know who Tavai is as a player until next year, fully. But
no, right. I don't think – I agree. I mean, okay, rookie linebacker, it's, sometimes it's hard to tell what they're doing. But when I watch him, it's like when I watch Jared Davis's rookie, I'm like, okay, this guy's bad, but he's a good athlete. Okay. Mm-hmm. When I watch Tavai, like, this guy is actually better than Jared Davis was as a rookie. A lot better, I think. Yeah. But I just don't think he can do it. I don't think he had, like, Jared Davis always had the possibility that light might go on, okay? Jelani Tavai isn't going to cut a tenth of a second off his 40-yard dash.
Well, I don't know if you're on Twitter, but there's a user called MathBomb on Twitter that does these relative athletic scores. And there's a lot of science that goes into saying, like a defensive end that has a score below X is way less likely to be successful in the NFL than one that scores above a certain number. And I think that Tavai falls into the below average numbers category. And I think, Bob Quinn's gotten cute like this before, right? When he drafted Tease Tabor in the second round, everybody knew he was a crap athlete, but for some reason, his brains were able to get him through in college and it never translated into the NFL. And so we definitely have to have a little concern about that for sure. Because like you said, you've got guys that have the athleticism and you hope it works out. And you've got the guys that don't, and you got to hope that they can make it happen.
Yeah. Does Tavai even have a RAS score coming out? Because he didn't go to the combine, right? He came in pre-injured, as they say, right? And I think any numbers that they had on him might have been based on a pro day, which I don't trust pro day numbers at all.
Right.
So, he might, whatever RAS score is out there, again, you can double check me on whether he was at the combine. But if he wasn't, any RAS scores that are out there that are below average, they might be like, in truth, they might have been like really below average.
Yeah. That's the one thing. Don't worry, you will be double checked, and not by us.
Yeah,
that's the one thing that always happens with the show with everybody else. So, yeah, no, it's interesting. We'll have to see. He may, and it may not. There's guys whose play elevate them above their athleticism.
Yeah. So Jelani Tavai scored a 4.14 on the RAS. Out of 10.
Okay, but was that based on a combine score, or was that based on
that? Well, I would say that's not. I don't think he went to the combine, so that's based on his whatever scores. So theoretically, take that for what it's worth. All those are hand times, and sometimes those are a little bit nicer to people than not. But
and other than that, also, beyond that, you have players who are hugely gifted athletically, but unfortunately are always out of position. Right, Tavai's a guy that's made up for his lack of athleticism relative to others.
No, right, exactly. No, that's exactly right.
Yep.
In a sense, it's scary because this might be the ceiling. Mm-hmm. I don't know that. Maybe, and I'm not saying he isn't going to get better, but it's like when you watch Jared Davis as a rookie, you could just look at it and say, okay, he's not going to be this bad forever. He's going to eventually find the right gap. Okay.
My favorite thing.
I look at it, I'm like, hey, I don't know where this guy goes. So anyway, but I think that this connects, just like you guys were saying about, the problem with getting rid of Patricia is that there are guys like Tavai that are on this team, and that's, he's not going to, there's no other defense that he's good. And I think that it kind of, I think there's a 90% chance that neither, we don't have our GM and we don't have our coach, but I almost feel like we got to let it roll for one more year just to prove it out, because the pain that's going to be involved with redoing this team is going to be real.
Yeah. Oh, it's going to be real bad.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I'd almost rather say Like, I think if they got rid of Patricia this year, I think that probably the right thing to do really would be to say, hey, let's let Quinn hire another coach, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like those guys should be ride or die together.
Yep.
And if like they get it done next year, great. But if they don't, they're both gone. That's the way I would look at it if I were in ownership.
I don't disagree with that at all. I'm very much of the same mind as to where you are. And I think you know, they make the playoffs or just miss the playoffs next year. I think that buys them their last year, but I think they're ride or die together for sure. But there has to be significant improvement, and we have to see where this grand experiment of replanting a bud from the Belichick tree is going, where it stands, and how it's working. Because I just, you're right. It's going to be absolutely painful to try to pull this thing apart.
And the last thing I want to do is watch Bob Quinn try to draft for a different defense again. Man, that's just, I can't do that.
Right.
I can't do that. Like if we're going to switch defenses, let's switch GMs for God's sakes.
Yeah, I mean, Bob Quinn basically came out and said he didn't really know how to draft for Jim Caldwell, which is a scary thing to hear your GM say.
But that's just another nail in the ride or die coffin, right?
Yep.
Right. That's exactly right. You know, because I don't know. After watching him hire Patricia, I mean, he's not going to know. He's not going to have more information about the next hire he makes.
Mm-mm.
Like he had like almost perfect information, you know,
right.
Accepting a few things
right.
About Patricia, and this doesn't look good. And like he's going to go hire some dude he doesn't know now.
They did it with Bevel though. They did it with Bevel and it worked. So I think the defensive hire for coordinator this offseason is going to be super, super illustrative and maybe give us a little bit of a view into what's going on with this team and how they'll survive or not. I think this defensive coordinator position is going to be, it's just going to tell us what the future holds for this team.
Yeah, I think I like Bevel, but to me, Bevel is an average offensive coordinator, and he looks like a superstar because he's replacing a dolt.
Mm-hmm.
I think Jim Bob Cooter. I watched that offense and I was like, this guy's they had a lot of talent, and he couldn't do anything with it.
But Stafford's having a career year with Bevel until he went down, right? I mean, he was
right. But
killing it.
This offense, though, there's enough talent on this offense that this offense should be good,
mm-hmm.
And it was only not good, I think, because we had JBC.
Yeah, I don't like our wide receiver core, to be honest. I don't think we have. Yeah, I think between Marvin Jones and Kenny Golladay, we have a great number two. I don't think we have the superstar. Maybe I'm confused and jaded from the whole CJ thing. I just don't think we have that big playmaker wide receiver number one guy. I love Marvin and I love Golladay. Don't get me wrong. I just don't think we have that true number one guy on this team right now.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Those guys, I don't dislike any. I mean, like they're good. They're both really strong receivers.
Yeah.
But they can't get separation.
Right.
Like literally, if either of those guys were playing for a team that had a below average quarterback, everybody would say, "Wow, what happened to these guys? They were good when Matt Stafford was throwing to them." But like you see now that there's a guy who has a little bit less accuracy, just they don't get the separation that most quarterbacks are going to require to, be a really good receiver.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Hey, Ken, great conversation, man. We're going to get going here because we got to wrap it up. Sandman has a couple things he has to do, and I need to do a couple things here too tonight. So appreciate the chat. Appreciate the call, man. Welcome. Call in anytime when we're doing the show. It did great stuff.
Yeah, thanks.
Have a good one.
All right, brother. We'll see you. All right. There we go. That was it. No more calls. We'll say, don't forget about us on Patreon, patreon.com/DetroitLionsPodcast, patreon.com/DetroitLionsPodcast. As little as $1 a month will get you access to the wicked cool Slack chat. It's the most intelligent chat in the Lions fandom on the internet. And on game day and throughout the week, it's good. It's real. It's good stuff. I'm really happy. That's one of my happiest things to come out of creating the show, because it gives me a good place to go and get sound thinking. All right, check us out on Facebook, facebook.com/The Detroit Lions Podcast, facebook.com/The Detroit Lions Podcast. Follow us on the Twitter, at DET Lions Podcast, at DET Lions Podcast. It's the most spectacular place to see the most spectacular pictures of Sandman
with no pants on.
That's right. All right. Give us a call via Skype, Detroit Lions Podcast, all one word, Detroit Lions Podcast, or on the Lions line at 929-33-LIONS, 929-335-4667, and go to DetroitLionsPodcast.com. You've heard of it, DetroitLionsPodcast.com. You go there, subscribe to the podcast, and we'll show up in your ear holes automatically. Thank you for tuning in. We're going to see you next time on the Detroit Lions Podcast. Remember, no pants. Maybe we're going to do some toasters and hot tubs. We'll talk about that next week. But there's no problems, because we're your Detroit Lions and Reddit Connection. All right, YouTubers, thank you so much for joining
Thanks, guys.
us, man. Appreciate it. Love it that you were there, Sam, man. You were always the bomb. Thank you. We'll see you guys this week. Sorry, last week work just was... I couldn't get away. I literally, Case was ready on Tuesday to do it. Riz was going to fill on Wednesday, and neither night, and any of the nights, I couldn't get free to do a show. So you guys that keep listening, thanks a lot. And I'm sorry we didn't get one out last week, but nothing's happening. We're still doing it. We'll be back this week in full, I don't know, no pants mode. So see you later, tubers. Thank you.
All right, later, guys.